I wonder what this new FaceTime setting is. You can call someone in history. Let's try someone in 1847, new Irish immigrant. Let's try this out. I'm trying to connect to 1847. Might take a second. Try this out. Oh, here we go. It's connecting.
Hello there.
Hello,
Who am I speaking to?
O'Brien.
Brian. Oh, Brian. My name's Joel. You're here on the Big One Radio Show Hotline. I understand you're from back in the day, almost 200 years ago. Where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from Ireland, now living in
Ireland.
Canada.
What was that? So, what year is it there?
1847.
What time is it?
Um,
No, they don't have clocks. Never mind. Sorry. So what was Ireland like back in 1847?
Oh, back in Ireland, it's a terrible time in Ireland. There was no food going around. We were in a terrible famine. Um, there was a total lack of potato crops. People were starving. People were dying around the whole country. People were getting kicked out of their homes by the British, and just a terrible, terrible time.
What was the cause of this potato famine? It sounds pretty awful, O'Brien.
Oh, the potato famine was pretty terrible. Um, it was basically this fungus that attacked all of the potatoes in Ireland, and it was a fungus that originated in South America. They told us it came on all the ships from South America, but since we only had one potato crop at the time, it sort of spread like wildfire. There was nothing we could do. It just sort of took over everything. We had no food. There was water, but people were starving around us from it. That was our main crop. It fed all of our workers. Um, it was our livelihood pretty much, just baking potatoes.
Maybe you should have had some backup crop, maybe some cabbage
Looking
or
back
something.
on it now, Canada's pretty well off with our much more diverse crop.
You're in Canada now, so how did that trip begin to Canada there, O'Brien?
Well, the trip began because of the um, starvation that we were all going through. I was fortunate enough to not be quite starving at that point. I still had some money to move on, but I started by moving. Decided to take a ship um, from Ireland to Canada. They had these cargo ships that came across with wheat and stuff from Canada to England, and on their way back, they needed some sort of ballast. So instead of loading it with rocks, they would get some money for taking some people across. Um, so what we did is I packed up all my stuff, as much as I could carry, basically.
When you had to leave your home, what kind of things do you bring?
Well, I could try to bring everything. Well, as much as I could. I brought some family pictures, my clothes. Um, we were told that we needed enough food and water for the whole trip, for ourselves, and the trip takes almost 2 months, I guess. So it was a long time. So you had to bring as much food as you can, but you only have so much space. So we went to the shipyard.
Well,
Um,
shipyard. What was that like? What were
um,
they?
the shipyard was pretty hectic when we got there. Um, it was the ship. Sorry, it was the harbor of Limerick, I think it was called, that we went to, and there was thousands of people there, like tens of thousands of people there trying to get on these ships. I got on my ship called the Jessie. Quite the quite the steed she was. Three masts, a lot of sails.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I know the kind.
yeah, so it looked pretty nice at the beginning. So we got on. I brought on my food, my water. There was somebody beside me with their chickens.
Oh
They
yeah,
were bringing those on board, and so we had
the
as much
cost.
as we could bring from what we had, which
Yeah.
wasn't too much. But when we got on, there was tons of people around me, lots of them sick, lots of them starving. Like I was saying, terrible times. They had a doctor and a nurse there getting onto the ship, not getting on, sorry, inspecting everybody getting on, and they were checking for some sort of disease, um, looking at your tongues for black spots and any sort of
Did you
fever
have
or anything.
Did you have any black spots?
No, I fortunately did not, but some people around me did, and they weren't allowed on the ship. Some families were split up as some of their kids would have it, and they couldn't go across, but some parts of the families did.
So how long did this trip take? When did you finally get to Canada?
Well, the trip took 2 months, but the conditions on the ship were pretty horrible. Um, People were living in pretty much filth. We were kept underneath the main deck of the boat to keep out of the way of everybody else working on the boat. So there was several hundred of us underneath the boat sleeping in basically there was raw sewage. There was pretty gross things. There was people sick of um, the disease, and it was pretty gross. Lots of
So it
bad times.
didn't smell, didn't smell very good.
Oh, not at all. Didn't smell good.
But it's
People were coughing. You were kept up all the time from people asking for water and for food, but there was just none to go around, and it was a long journey in the high seas.
So where did you get to in Canada? What was your destination?
Well, my overall destination I wanted to reach to was Toronto. I'd heard some fairly good things about Toronto, but our first stop was in Quebec, this Groseille Island. It was sort of a quarantine zone for everybody in case anybody had the disease, and they had doctors there checking what you had to make sure. But after that 2 month boat ride in a medium-sized ship there, surrounded by the people with typhoid, it was a matter of stroke of luck that I didn't get it on my way across. As our way across, there was bodies dumped over with the disease, and people were dying from it. So a lot of people that were sick got sent onto the island as a quarantine zone, and sadly, not very many of them made it off the Groseille Island. There, they um, just had no way to cure the disease.
Do you speak any French, O'Brien?
No, I just heard the poutine was pretty good.
It is. Check it out.
Hmm.
Montreal. Go there next.
I'll try. Not on
So,
that ship though.
so you're going to Toronto after that. So was Toronto? How was Toronto? Was it a bit better?
Well, Toronto was an interesting city. It was only 14,000 people at the time, and there was tens of thousands of us coming at the time. All Irish, so pretty much took over the place when we got there. Most people there were Irish that were arriving. All of them arriving were, um, but they were in pretty big panic mode when we first arrived. Um, it was in June when we arrived, and pretty nice time of year. The weather was warm and everything, but people were so sick that they once again had a checkpoint for with doctors and nurses. Forget the doctor's name, but um, a lot of people again got sent to a quarantine zone over there in these fever huts or fever camps, something like that. Um, and basically, the only way they had to try to cure the disease in Toronto was alcohol, which could sound like a pretty good time, but not when you have a deadly disease, I guess.
Mm-mm. It's like an infinite hangover
Yeah, I
type.
guess. Deadly hangover.
So when were you relieved a bit when you finally got there? What were your feelings like?
Oh, when we went to Toronto, we were very relieved, but you're pretty shocked
They're
because the people around you can barely stand. You're trying to look as healthy as you can just so you don't get sent into this fever camp and stuff. Like you're trying to hold off, and
but
people are sort
potato.
of being pushed around and stuff to get out. And
There were potatoes.
I'm not sure. I didn't really want a potato when I got there. It wasn't.
I guess you wanted a potato after that.
No. No, no,
Sorry,
no.
go on.
So we went from Toronto. They had those checkpoints, and I got up to the line, and you had to open up your tongue for them to check for that black spot again. And I could sort of feel a fever coming on, but I think it was more of just a mental thing. I managed to make it through, considering
You were just drunk.
maybe 1 in 3 people died off the ship that I was on. So it was pretty traumatic, but luckily I made it on through and I made it into Toronto. So
So
that's where the journey is now.
overall trip, good, bad.
Oh, it was a terrible, terrible trip. Saw horrible, horrible things, but now being in Canada, there's at least the chance for survival. Where in Ireland, that just would not have existed. Um, there just wasn't enough resources to go around for the amount of people who were there. So in Toronto and the surrounding area is enormous. So there's plenty of things to go around. The States is right there. I have thought about migrating there, but I think I'm gonna stay in Canada for now. And yeah,
Well,
liking
well,
Toronto.
sorry.
Liking Toronto.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've had quite the ordeal, O'Brien. But we'd like to thank you for joining us here
Oh,
on the big. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
oh, just what's the future like there?
Uh, it's not bad.
Is there
There's
potatoes?
healthy potatoes. They got this thing called a quarter pounder. It's pretty good. And they have fries. You ever try French fries in Quebec? There on Gros Isle? They're made
No.
from. Actually, you know what? Maybe just stay away from those too. Too much potato.
Yeah.
But O'Brien, we'd like to thank you for having you here on the Big One Hotline.
Thank you.
So thanks for your time. Next, we're gonna try and prank phone call Hitler back in 1944. So
Wow.
thank you, O'Brien. Take care and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Bye.